So we have some news to talk about for Valorant esports, and it's this: the end of year letter to the community of VCT 2023 from Leo Ferry, the global head of Valorant esports. Now, they start off this, and I will link it in the description if you want to read it all yourself, but this is going to start off with just kind of, recapping the year. Obviously, if you watch this channel, you probably are aware of what happened last year, so, we're going to skip through all of what happened last year. Hey, Shopify won game changers. We're going to skip to this. What's next? Because that, I think, is what is perhaps most interesting. So the first thing they talk about is game changers and how they, are liking where game changers is heading and all of that. But in 2024, we'll begin the next phase of the program. So game changers competitions will continue to exist, but will focus more on the upward mobility and reducing friction for women to be picked up by mixed gender rosters. That will come in the form of rules and policies such as player loans, the two-way player system, and exceptions for game changers players, such as making them exempt from the territory import rule as a way to facilitate and incentivize organizations to give players the chance they deserve to prove themselves. Now, this is all really nice stuff, right? And I'm kind of interested to see how teams, do use the player loans and two-way player system. I'm not convinced that it will get used a ton, not just for game changers players, but just for any players a ton right now this year, right? Because if things were going really well in the economy, I could definitely see this being a thing, right? You're a team, you sign a sixth player who's maybe very young, maybe not even old enough to play in the actual VCT, but is old enough to play in like challenges or game changers, right? Like a 16, 17-year-old. You pick them up, they're a good talent, they're, like potentially the future, right? And you loan them out to a tier 2 team and you let them develop, right? Whether that's a game changer players or not. That could happen. The problem is we're in a bit of an esports winter, as you might know, and the economy not doing so well across the globe. So I don't know how much this will be used by teams in general, whether that's for game changers players or not. I think just in general, we've encountered this, I think, at an interesting point where I'm not sure how much this will actually get used. I hope it does, because I think it'll be interesting, but I'm not sure it will do a ton, and I don't think that, some of the other things like the territory import rule are going to be enough to incentivize teams to actually pick up game changers players, at least for this next year. Next thing they talk about is the change to challenges, which we've already heard about, but basically if you don't know, due to the timing of Ascension Challengers Leagues ended way too early this year, creating a gap, leaving teams with no opportunities to compete. In 2024, we're implementing a new calendar with competitions year-round, including a healthy break around Ascension, which now happens after Champions. And we're also going to start promoting teams from Premier into the Challengers Leagues directly. And we already knew this, right? But it is going to be better. And so this time next year, how everyone hates how long the off-season is, and we'll get into just how long it is in a second. But, everyone hates how long the offseason is. That won't be as big of a problem next year because Challengers games will still be going on, around this kind of time next year where, tier 2 teams are actually playing for stuff that matters, right? So that will be interesting and, we'll have actually something to watch where teams are, really trying and actually trying their best, right? And we can get invested in the tier 2 storylines while tier 1 is on a break. So next year should be better is basically what I'm going to say. But now we'll move on to China as well. And if you've been keeping up with the news, you know that China is going to become the 4th international league. We're going to get the Ascension tournament coming up, it seems, as well, pretty soon, which I think is going to be an 8-team tournament. And these are the teams that are, the kind of permanent members of the Chinese league. I'm sure many of you know more about Chinese esports than I do. Obviously, I recognize some of the names here from their Valorant orgs. Also, Wolverhampton Wanderers are kind of technically my local team now in Valorant, so maybe I'll be a Wolves fan, who knows? But yeah, these are the teams, and yeah, get used to seeing them, I guess. The next thing is when the league is actually starting. So they want to, in 2024 to design a season with better progression where the stakes and scale of competitions increase as we go deeper into the calendar. We love starting 2023 with a tournament and want to make that an evergreen part of the sport moving forward. Now, here's the thing about this. This is a little, corporate lie, I think, because I swear that I remember that when they announced the VCT League and how it was going to go, that they announced it as if they were going to do one big league season and then a Masters, and then a second big league season and then another Masters and then Champs, right? That's how the calendar was going to go. And lock-in was just always meant to be a one-off. I think what they realized last year was you can't do 2 league seasons. It lasts too long. There's just no way, especially if you keep increasing the teams year by year, right? Like, and we keep getting more and more teams in the league. Like, there's just no way you can do 2 of them. It lasts too long. So instead, what they've decided is, let's just do a small tournament to start off the year. And hey, that means that we can then have a Masters with 8 teams, and then one with 12 teams, and then Champs with 16 teams. And it kind of builds up as we're going along, right? So it kind of makes sense to do that. And so That's what it's going to be like from now on. And starting on February 16th for America, 17th for Pacific, 20th for EMEA, and 22nd for China, each league will host a kickoff tournament to pit their teams against each other to crown a winner and qualify teams for Masters Madrid. So the top 2 from each of the leagues will go to Masters Madrid, and this is when the league starts. It's later than I thought it was, to be honest. I thought that we were going to start in like late Jan. Turns out we're actually going to start in mid-February, but we'll get into that in a second as well. But yeah, this is when things start, and I assume that these tournaments will last, you know, somewhere between like 10 days and 2 weeks, right? So somewhere in that. Also, there's going to be 11 teams, maybe for Americas, who knows? There's going to be 11 teams in these tournaments. 11 is not a great number, as I'm sure you're all aware, to do these kind of tournaments with. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how they do that, because can you even seed teams when, like, they're all different teams? I don't know. It's kind of weird. We'll see how they do it. We still don't have the details on that, but there it is. And then we're going to talk about Masters Madrid as well. And what's funny about this is this date is wrong. It's not March 8th to the 24th. You can see here that it's going to be held in the Madrid Arena. It's going to be from March 14th to the 24th instead. So that is actually when it starts. Apparently not March 8th. Don't listen to this. And yeah, the 8 best teams in the world will meet in the Madrid Arena, which I think is like a 12,000-seater stadium or something. But we'll see exactly, you know, if they change that with how they want to set it up. And Masters will feature a fresh new format, starting with a Swiss stage and ending with a double elimination brackets we know and love. Now, here's the thing about 8-team Swiss stages is that they can get a little weird, and it depends exactly how Riot are going to do this, and we don't know the exact details, right? But this comment here from a little CS fan kind of explains it pretty well. So you can't use a Swiss system with only 8 teams. First round is okay. You have 4 matches with 0-0 teams. Second round is okay. 2 matches with 1-0 teams and 2 matches with 0-1 teams. Third round is okay. 1 match with the 2-0 teams, 1 match with the 0-2 teams, 2 matches with the 1-1 teams. Fourth round is a mess. 3 teams with a 2-1 record and 3 teams with a 1-2 record. WTF, that is why you can't use a Swiss system with only 8 teams. You need 16 for it to work. Okay, and here's the thing about that, and this is just a guess of how I think it's going to work, but we have March 14th to the 24th. That's 11 days if you count the 14th as a day to use. And this is how I think it might go, where you're going to get 4 days for the playoffs, essentially, right? You get the first 2, like, semifinals, then you get the upper final and the kind of elimination match, then you get the lower final, then you get the grand final, right? That's 4 days to do the playoffs. So that leaves us with 7 days, and I guess that the way that this is going to work is, you know, 4 matches for the first round. That's going to take 2 days. You know, we could then have 4 matches again for the second round. That's going to take 2 days. You know, 2 games a day. Then the third round, again, you've got, you know, 1 match here, 1 match there, 2 matches there. That's another 4 games, so I'm going to guess that's another 2 days. And then you've got this kind of like 3 games that you need between these kind of teams. And so I'm going to guess that we get 1 day of 3 games. And so that will be a 1-dayer with 3 games on that day. And that's 7 days. And hey, 7 plus 4 is 11. And that's your whole tournament. No breaks. Away we go. And then they talk about stuff for 2025 as well, which is very interesting, right? As they say, they don't usually talk about things so far in advance, but I want to set some expectations. Well, here we go. We've been very intentional about having a healthy offseason that gives pros time to rest, teams time to restructure their rosters, and fans the opportunity to miss the sport. While all that remains true, we don't believe the calendar is as good as it can be. The current calendar is a bit too tight from February to August, you don't say, and sparse from September to January, you don't say. Things are either too hot or too cold. Whilst we're not looking to increase the number of competitions, we want to give them space. We want to space them out better, starting the season earlier and ending later in the year, giving us proper breathing time between stages and events. In 2024, we'll still have the late start, mainly to give the new teams in China to prepare, but calendar changes will go live in 2025. We'll share more details next year. Now, if I had to guess, I would assume they're just going to start in January and end in September, right? That's probably all that's going to happen, and then you just get bigger breaks in between the, you know, the different stages of tournaments and whatever, which is a good thing, great thing. Can't wait for that to happen. It also will probably mean that Ascension will happen in October, assuming they keep Ascension after champs, and you know, and then we'll get game changes in November, and so we get a shorter actual off season with things potentially still going on, and challenges, you know, might still be going on for some of that as well. So just next year, hopefully, will just be a lot better. And then finally, they talk about money, which obviously is important, and they talk about how they like, you know, how the partnership system is going or whatever, and how Lock-In made 10 million for the teams, and Champs made 22 million for the teams, for the bundles and whatever, and that meant that, you know, on average, you got $1 million per team. which is good, right? Like, that's great. And also just goes to show how much money does Riot make from these skins. I mean, that's great. Like, that's just two, you know, that's just champs in the lock-in one. Like, that's crazy, really. And then they're not even giving all of that away to the team. Like, what's going on? Like, what? Crazy, really. Anyway, they're getting a lot of money. And they talk about how, you know, it's going to the pros, quite a bit of it as well, from prize pools and stuff. So good. Yay. Everyone's rich. And next year, though, we're getting VCT bundles. For the first time ever, you'll be able to support your favorite teams in-game with team-branded gun skins and goodies. This is a new space for us, but we're incredibly bullish about it. Bundles will launch in February, right around the kickoff tournament, and will be available throughout the season. Now, that I find very interesting, that it'll be available throughout the season, because it potentially could mean, you know, like let's say, you know when Sentinels did the Shroud thing, right? And they signed Shroud. Like, think about it. You could be a team and just sign someone like, you know, Shroud or Taric or whatever, right? And then obviously everyone just buys your bundle if it's available throughout the season. Everyone just goes now and just buys your bundle, right? So keep that in mind for if any team does do something that just seems like maybe not the best strategic decision, but is just completely clout based. You know, this is maybe a reason why they do it. But anyway, thanks to the Valorant development team's hard work, I'm happy to share that every team in the international leagues will get the full bundle with a gun skin, including the recently promoted Ascension teams. Now, this is a big deal because it was rumored. Remember when the Guard dropped out? Remember when the Guard just didn't want to be a part of VCT, even though they won Ascension? It was rumored or speculated that one of the reasons that they didn't do that is because that they didn't like that they weren't getting the same benefits as, you know, the full-time teams, right? And that maybe they weren't getting a gun skin and stuff like that. Well, now, and I don't know whether this was decided before that, and the Guard just didn't want to be a part of it anyway, or if this has been decided since. But either way, Ascension teams are going to get a skin. And that is a big deal. That's a really big deal. Because again, especially if you are, you know, a Disguised Toast or a, you know, a Moist with Ludwig and Moist Critical, right? And you have like some big brand recognition, you could understand that teams would buy your skin if it was available, right? Just slap Ludwig's face on it or something, you know, and people will buy that skin. Now, if you do win Ascension, you know, there's potentially quite a bit of, you know, money to be made here, you know, by doing that, right? And so that, I think, is a big deal for these Ascension teams. Like, that's something that we didn't know about before, but now that, like, it's said here in, like, plain bold letters to everyone to see, all those tier 2 teams, it's, like, written here, like, hey, you will get a skin. That's kind of a big deal. And so it looks like this is what we're getting. We're getting a classic skin this year and a player card. I don't really know what this is. Maybe a title is that meant to represent? Don't quite know. But we're getting a classic skin this year. You know, as we go forward, obviously, I assume that they'll do more and more ones, right? Maybe for each year we'll get a different gun or something. You know, that would be somewhat interesting. You know, maybe next year it's a knife or something, right? And yeah, we'll see how that goes. But this year it's a classic. I'm interested to see what the designs are, to be honest. I hope that, you know, teams get to kind of put their personality. I'm really hoping, and if, by the way, if Paper Rex got to design theirs, if they just put, like, if they just write, like, W Gaming on a classic, and if it was just exactly the same, just a normal classic with W Gaming written on it, that thing would sell a lot, right? So, you know, things like this, like marketability of things like that, you could see, you know, that might have a big impact on who buys your skin. And so overall, I think that this is a lot of good news, to be honest. I think pretty much everything in here is positive, apart from maybe when the season starts. But I'm, in particular, looking forward to the schedule changes. That, for me, and what I do is perhaps the biggest deal. But there's just a lot of good things in here. And yeah, looks pretty good.